What up, everybody? This is Dregs One. Welcome to a very special episode of the History of the Bay podcast. Today, we're going to do things a little bit differently because our guest had to appear remotely, but nonetheless, it's a really great and important episode featuring Shannon Lee, the daughter of Bruce Lee, talking about his roots in the Bay Area and much more. So I hope y'all enjoy it. I'm really excited for this episode of History of the Bay. My guest today is someone very special. She has done amazing work carrying on the legacy of her father, someone who influenced generations, changed the film industry, took on the film industry, stood for the rights of his people and all other oppressed peoples. And someone who really brought martial arts into the modern age. And I'm talking about, of course, the legendary Bruce Lee. And I'm here with his daughter, Shannon Lee.
Hi.
Hi, Shannon. Thank you so much for taking time because I know you're really busy.
No worries. I'm happy to be here. Thank you for the invitation.
I had to invite you because I went to the Bruce Lee exhibit at the We Are Bruce Lee. In Chinatown here in San Francisco, and I was just blown away seeing all the artifacts and his personal writings and the murals and everything up close. It really inspired me and motivated me.
I love that. That's awesome. Yeah, that's at the Chinese Historical Society in San Francisco, and it's a really beautiful exhibit, really well done. We obviously were connected and part of helping to bring it together. We were at the opening. I love not just the main exhibit that tells my father's story as an artist, as an actor, as a fighter, as a philosopher, but all of, as you said, all of the artwork that's in there is really beautiful too.
Yeah, I want to give a shout out to my friend Agana, who produced some artwork for the exhibit. I think I saw a photo of you two together, so that was really cool.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah. It was really special. I love the whole Bruce Lee Underground portion with a bunch of artwork from different African American artists in tribute and to my father. And I met so many of the artists there, and also, of course, the giant mural but done by Twin Walls up in the main exhibit area too. It's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, the Bay Area has a really strong connection to Bruce Lee that we'll get into. I also want to take the opportunity to let folks know that you're going to be at Bruce Lee Night for the Oakland Ballers on August 5th.
Yes, come on out, everybody. It's going to be a great time.
Well, we were just talking earlier about that San Francisco is actually the place where Bruce Lee was born.
That's right. Yeah. My father was born in the Chinese hospital in San Francisco, Chinatown. His father happened to be in the United States with his mother on tour with the Chinese opera. And they were performing in Chinatown and different Chinatowns around the country. And my grandmother was pregnant at the time. And so she happened to go into labor and give birth in San Francisco while they were on tour. And my father was the only one of his siblings born in the United States because they happened to be on tour during that time. So that's where he begins, in San Francisco.
And from there, he moved with his family back to Hong Kong. Is that correct?
Yeah, he was here. I don't know the exact amount, something like 6 months or something, and then moved back as an infant back to Hong Kong, where he was raised and where he lived until he was 18. But at 18, he came back to the United States for a number of different reasons, in part to claim his citizenship. And in part because he was getting in a lot of trouble in Hong Kong. So his parents were like, "You're an American citizen. Go back there. Get out of all this trouble that you're in, and make something of yourself." And so he came back through San Francisco on his way back to the United States.
Yeah, he was getting into like a lot of street fights, and from what I remember, he was kind of getting like bullied and picked on, and wasn't it also partially because he was of mixed ancestry?
For sure. Yeah. My father's mother was half European. So he was a quarter European. And in particular, in his Kung Fu classes, because he studied with Ip Man from the age of 13 to 18. And he was picked on a lot by this other students because back in the day, and even, later on in his life, it was considered very taboo to teach Chinese Kung Fu, Chinese martial arts, to non-Chinese people. And so, because he had some European blood, and I think in part too because he was a very, very avid student, and he became very good really fast. He had a lot of energy, and he was sort of constantly upending class in a lot of ways. I think there were a multitude of reasons, but that he was made to leave. So his teacher, Ipman, actually ended up having him train separately from the rest of the class. He didn't kick him out entirely. He continued to train him, and he had his senior instructor, Wang Shenlong, train him as well. But he could not be in class with the rest of the kids.
I wonder if that actually ended up working to his benefit because he became, such a like I mean, you could tell he was like so hungry to learn. I mean, he really gave
Yeah,
his practice everything that he had.
he really did. And I think he was an extremely curious person and highly experiential and experimental. And so, he wanted to test everything. He wanted to test technique. He wanted to test himself. And I think it did provide a better environment for him to be able to be more free in that regard and to gain more one-on-one information and practice. And he was a kind of guy who he would go to class, but he would train and himself all the time, whether he was in class or not. And like one of his good friends, William Chung, who is a grandmaster in Wing Chun in Australia, who was his friend growing up in Hong Kong, he used to say, your dad used to like walk down the street with dumbbells in his hands and stuff. Like he was constantly pushing himself in different ways. And so I think you're right. Um, I think to a degree, it illustrated a lot of things for him. I think it gave him the ability to learn faster and in a way more suited to himself. And I think it also gave him a window into a world and opinions about prejudice and racism and that sort of stuff that he didn't believe in. And so I think that in some ways it was a beneficial experience.
And that's amazing because the idea of not teaching outsiders, so to speak, he
Yeah.
he flipped that completely on its head because he was open to instructing anybody. And from what I understand, that's he started that almost immediately when he arrived here in the United States.
Yeah. like I said, when he came back to the United States, he came in through San Francisco. And he was in San Francisco just for a few months. And then he made his way up to Seattle because he had family friends that had a Chinese restaurant up there and they gave him a job and a place to stay. And, he was constantly still trying to keep up his practice. And when he finally decided to start teaching, his very first student was an African American man by the name of Jesse Glover. And he immediately, he taught people of all ethnicities. He taught women. He taught, his best friend was Japanese, and as you know, historically, there's bad blood between China and Japan. So, he really just was interested in people who were um, wanting to learn like him, and he didn't want others to experience the limitations that had been placed on him as a child.
So I actually trained for a while at the Oakland Jeet Kune Do School under Felix Macias Jr.
Oh,
So
wow.
I know Felix's father was one of Bruce Lee's students as well, and James Lee, no relation, was the co-founder of that school too.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, so my father was in Seattle and then he met James Lee, who lived in Oakland, and they became friends immediately. And James said, "Why don't you come down to Oakland and open a second school?" Because my father had opened one school in Seattle, the Junpang Kung Fu Institute. And he said, "Why don't you come down and open a second school in Oakland? We got a lot of really great, avid martial artists and people down here in the Bay." And so my father did. He came down to Oakland in 1964 and he opened his second school with James Lee.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, we definitely claim Bruce Lee here in the Bay Area.
Oh, for sure. As you should, as you should. I mean, I often say, even though he didn't live in the Bay Area for a super long time, it was a really intensely influential time in his life. I mean, first of all, he was born in the Bay, so that's like the most influential moment of one's life, being born. But when he came back and lived in Oakland, there were so many seminal moments that happened for him. First of all, he'd just gotten married. His son, my brother Brandon, was born in Oakland. He opened his second school in Oakland. His father died while he was living in Oakland. He went down and participated in the Long Beach Internationals while he was living in Oakland. And there he was discovered by Hollywood. And Hollywood came calling while he was living in Oakland and asked him to come down and audition. He fought his big challenge match against other martial artists from the San Francisco area and really used that as a pivotal moment to develop his own style of Jeet Kune Do. All of that happened in the Bay Area.
That's amazing. I mean, I think also, as you mentioned, like teaching other people of other backgrounds, the Bay Area is it has a strong Chinese presence, Oakland and San Francisco, but it's such a cultural melting pot. And I think that's one thing that like, especially the Black community has really embraced about Bruce Lee is, is that he was aware of everybody's separate struggles and how we have more things similar than different. And I think from what I see of how inclusive he was, that the issues going on at the time in these different communities were really important to him too.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, he really believed in supporting individuals and supporting everyone's right to live and to live freely and well and to learn. And he was very aware of different things that were happening in the world. And while he was not necessarily like a political activist, like out there in that way, he lived his life as as a form of activism, if you will.
And that reminds me one thing I wanted to ask about that I'm not sure how much people are aware of, how prolific of like a philosopher that he was, and
Yeah.
how deeply he thought about the world and martial arts and himself. And one thing about the We Are Bruce Lee exhibit was being able to read some of his handwritten notes.
Yeah.
And I also have the book, the Tao of Jeet Kune Do,
Yeah.
where actually very little of that book is actually about fighting, and so much of it is dedicated to philosophy and discipline. And do you know where or when he started developing the philosopher side?
It's interesting. I think that first of all, his teacher, Ip Man, would often use sort of like naturalistic or Taoist language when talking about martial arts, like how one had to, how it was better to be like bamboo because bamboo sways with the breeze, whereas a mighty oak tree might be strong but can be snapped and broken, right? So I think he started to get a taste of that kind of connection when he was a kid. But then when he came to the US and he got his GED up in Seattle and he enrolled in the University of Washington. Um, we have a lot of writings of his from that time where he says, a lot of people thought that I would major in like physical education because I'm so into martial arts and so into exercise and all of that. But he ended up ultimately deciding to major in philosophy. And he started to read a lot of the more Western philosophers like Alan Watts, and then folks like Krishnamurti and Joseph Campbell, and in combination with, you know, um, Eastern philosophers and like the Tao Te Ching and Lao Tzu and all of that. So he he would sometimes go and lecture in Eastern philosophy at the local high schools in Seattle. And actually, that's where my mom first laid eyes on him. She didn't meet him then, but she saw him in the hallway and she was like, "Who is this well dressed, handsome guy?" Always causing quite a stir because he was a very excellent dresser and all of that. But we have this writings of his from that time where he says, I want to teach martial arts, but it's very important to me that the physical is not separated from the mental and the emotional. There has to be a component of philosophy embedded in martial arts because otherwise it's just violence.
Wow.
There's no greater learning or purpose or guidance for one's life or one's soul or understanding why you move the way you do or how to interact with an opponent or another person without the philosophy piece. And so it became very important to him right away, really. And then he just continued uh, to expand on that throughout his life. And I really appreciate that you brought up, how much of a philosopher he was, because to me, when I took over in 2000, stewarding his legacy, the reason I did so was because of the philosophy. I've trained in martial arts, but I was never the martial artist that he was. Martial arts was his first and foremost. Whereas for me, the place we intersect is the philosophy. I love the philosophy. And his words and his perspectives on life have really helped me in my life. And I wanted people to know that about them. I felt like that piece had never really been celebrated or known. I mean, my father, in his book collection, It's over 2,800 books.
Wow.
And, he only lived to the age of 32. So that's a lot of books. And many of them are annotated and underlined. And it's not just books about martial arts, it's many books about philosophy as well. So, and as you say, he was very well written. Like he wrote his thoughts about life and martial art and who he was as a human being.
I'm really glad to hear that context because I think, there's like the famous be like water quote that's almost been like
Mm.
kind of distilled as like a meme, but it's
Yeah.
as profound as that statement is, it's like there's so much more that I discovered that he was putting out there.
Well, I mean, I wrote a book called Be Water, My Friend,
Right,
and it's an entire book just about that philosophy and what it really means
right.
and how you can embody it and use it in your life, how he used it, how I've come to use it, and how others can use it. And it's a very, if I do say so, accessible, simple book to read. It's not complex, it's not long, it's an easy read, and you don't have to be a Bruce Lee fan and you don't have to be a martial artist to really read it and have it speak to some aspect of your own life.
That's amazing. Yeah, I mean, I also want to commend you because you've done such an amazing job of taking this legacy and keeping it alive and breathing new life into it and finding ways to not only make it part of your father's legacy, but part of your own as
Yeah.
well. And I just think these messages that he embodied and that you embody are going to live on for many, many years to come.
Oh, thank you. I hope that they do because I really think that, well, my experience is that even though I've read my father's writings again and again and again, and I know so many of them very well, because they are timeless ideas and because they speak to the human condition and what it is to try and live this life as a human being, which is a very complex thing that we're all involved in. Um, it never gets old. Like one quote that I might have read 10 years ago, I read it again today and it hits me in a different way and I understand it in a different way, So I just think that there are a lot of ideas that are extremely timeless and will remain relevant for many years to come.
I agree. And I can't help but think that having that foundation that he learned with Ip Man and then going to Seattle and then going to the Bay Area and then into the world of Hollywood, I can imagine that being so grounded mentally was really helpful because another thing I learned in the exhibit was how much he struggled um, just pushing back against the racist Hollywood system of the time.
100%. 100%. I mean, I think the thing that was really um, important was that he considered himself a self-willed man, meaning that he understood that his destiny, his life was in his own hands. And he had a very strong belief in himself, but also in the idea that all of these limitations that we've created and all of these ways in which tried to limit others and categorize others and separate people. It's all man-made. It's all imaginary, And I think one of the things you said is really the important thing, and it's one of the things that I try to talk about in everything that I do, which is that um, you need to have a strong mind. Like, yes, it's great to train your body and have a strong body, but if you don't also have a strong mind, meaning a mind that is expansive, that is grounded, that is open and willing to learn, at a mind that has discernment, a mind that can't be easily thrown or rocked, or lose its way, then that will serve you more than anything, more than anything in your life, because so many of our challenges that we face are either completely made up by our thinking, or they can be made better or worse by our thinking. Because I never want to say there aren't challenges that come. Like there's stuff that happens that just comes out of nowhere. Like for me, like my brother died. I had no control over that. And it's something that happened. People get sick, people die, people lose their jobs. Like, there's stuff that people are oppressed, they're deported, they're whatever, right? Like all this stuff happens. And sometimes it's out of your control, but what is in your control is how you think about it and what you allow yourself to be able to do, and how you allow yourself to be able to think about it. My father used to say that perception alone, perspective alone, can solve most of your problems.
Wow.
And I think it's really true.
I agree. And especially when you talk about the mental being more important than the physical strength, it's actually, you kind of need the mental to achieve the physical power, because what Bruce Lee showed is the discipline.
Yeah.
I saw his training schedule at that exhibit.
Yeah.
It was very impressive. It honestly wasn't even like it wasn't like a insane boot camp type of schedule, but it was, this is how I'm going to start my morning, this is what I'm going to do mid-afternoon, and this is what I'm going to do in the evening every single day. I believe it was a 6-day schedule.
Yeah.
And if you have the discipline to just stick to that, then things will happen for you. And to tie it back to what I saw in the exhibit about how he was being typecast or unfairly paid, that he was basically the star of Green Hornet with the most screen time but the least pay.
Yeah.
I think he was getting less pay than the woman who played the Green Hornet's secretary.
He was being paid what the stunt people were being paid. He was not being paid on scale or par with any of the actors.
So I could see what lit a fire under him for him to realize, wait a second, I can use this Hollywood media to promote my martial arts, to inspire other people, and to ensure my success and security. The thing that stopped me in my tracks at that exhibit was a letter that he wrote to himself. It was almost like a contract.
Yeah.
Where he said, I, Bruce Lee, within the next 10 years will be the highest paid, he used the word Oriental movie star. I will have fans around, I can't remember the exact word, but it was something like, I will achieve, worldwide fame, and I will have $10 million in my possession.
Yeah.
And that just stopped me in my tracks, because I have so many creative goals and dreams myself in the world of entertainment. But I saw that on the surface, that almost sounds like, oh, I want to be rich and famous. But the end, he said something like, I will have total peace of mind and live with like complete freedom.
Yeah.
And that just like stopped me in my tracks, just reading. That was just so powerful.
Yeah. Yeah, no, he wrote that in 1969. So it was before he made any of the movies that catapulted him to stardom, but after he had done The Green Hornet. And, I think a couple of the things that you touched on are really important to note, which are that he worked really hard for everything that he did. Like you said, He trained every day. He meditated every day. He read books. He da da da. And one of the things he used to say is one of the hardest things to do in life is to make good use of time.
Huh.
You know, it's like, especially leisure time, like when you don't have anything pressing on you that you have to do, to be able to make good use of that time will change your life, right? And I think the other thing that was really beautiful about him, and it goes to that mental toughness and that attitude of belief in self and that hard combined with that hard work is that, you know, oftentimes when we see something going on, like for him, he could see in Hollywood that there were no Asian stars. There were people who acted. I'm not saying there weren't that, but there was nobody that was headlining movies in Hollywood as the romantic male lead, right? Like it just wasn't there. And so for many people, if they were to see that, they would be like, oh, well, there's no way I can do this. Like, it's not done. Like, it's going to be so hard. How am I ever going to break in? But for him, he looked at that and he said, there's an opportunity. Nobody else is doing this, which means that I could be the one to do it, you know? And I think that he just thought about life in that way. He was like, if I can see where there's a gap, right, in the marketplace, in society, in whatever, and I can clearly see what that is, and I can aim myself at that spot, then I believe I can get, like, there's something that I can work toward, you know?
Amazing. I mean, I definitely see why Hollywood was in a way not ready for someone like him.
Yeah.
Um, I love the fact that he was independent minded enough to go back to Hong Kong and produce his own films and write and star and take on all of these things himself. But what you're saying of that Asian male leading role, I think we're barely just now starting to see that. It's really shameful what Hollywood has done to Asian men and women, but particularly the emasculated portrayal of Asian men as either nerds or you know, some type of dumb villager or dry cleaner or something like that. And you know, Bruce Lee was like whipping on white dudes. He was whipping on Chuck Norris, right? Like, I think for so many people, whether it's people of color or just folks who haven't been able to own that sense of power in themselves, seeing that, having that example has meant so much.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And you know, the reason he went to Hong Kong is because he was trying to do the exact same thing in Hollywood. He was trying, you know, he was going out for auditions and trying to get parts, but there weren't any parts. And so he was creating his own film and TV ideas. His students were some of the top Hollywood stars, and Ted Ashley, who was the head of Warner Brothers. So like he had friends in high places, but even with all that, that they just wouldn't give him a chance. I mean, they would try to put him up for different shows and movies. And in the end, they just were like, you know, American audiences, they're not going to go for this. And you have an accent. It's like, you know, and we just don't believe that audiences will accept this. And I think one of the most important things is he didn't believe that. Like, it's really easy when people criticize you and tell you something's not possible to start to pick up that energy, right? And it's really hard to say, I don't believe that. That's not true. But not only did he not believe it, but he also realized that he was going to have to do it a different way. And one of his greatest philosophies, really the core philosophy of his, is this phrase, using no way as way, having no limitation as limitation. And the using no way as way part is I can't, is the idea that you shouldn't get locked into this is the only way. There are a multitude of ways to lead you to your purpose and your path. And so he went back to Hong Kong to make movies. And he was like, it's very similar to what Clint Eastwood did with the spaghetti westerns. He broke into Hollywood by making movies in Italy. and, and my father's like, you know what? He can do that. I can do that too. I was a child actor in Hong Kong, so I'll go back there and see if I can do it again. And as we know, he made those films. And then Warner Brothers said, okay, we see you've broken all the box office records. You're a bankable star. You know what you're doing. We'll put you in a movie. And then they made Enter the Dragon.
Wow. So, I mean, I have no doubt that he was on his way to accomplishing everything that he had set out to do in that letter that I read.
He was, for sure.
I wanted to ask about your childhood growing up while that was going on.
Yeah.
It's kind of like, you know, his family was right there with him of having to navigate those challenges. I think even another thing that was interesting was seeing that your parents were breaking barriers as a biracial couple.
Yep.
You know, in magazines and photo shoots, even back then.
Yeah.
What was your childhood like growing up with all this context?
You know, it's really interesting. So, I mean, I was very young, obviously. When my father died, I was only 4 years old. But I can tell you what I know from the people that I've talked to, but also from my own muscle memory, my own emotional memory of those times. The memory for me that is strongest of my father and of our childhood is how I felt. How I felt when I was with him and how my childhood felt. And I guess what I could say is I think the Hong Kong years were really challenging for my father because once he became famous, and I think a lot of famous people understand this, once you become famous, people want things from you, right? Like they want you to be in their movie. They want you to give them a lift up or to, give them money or whatever, right? Like, and so in Hong Kong, I think it was very difficult. I think he back in the States when we were living there, he had a very close-knit, dedicated, authentic group of friends who knew him before he was famous, who knew him as a teacher, who knew him as a friend who would help them out in any way that he could, and who would come over, who would share meals, all that kind of stuff. And I think that felt very good to my father and to us as kids growing up. Like my sense of my childhood was one of love, right? And safety and people who were good friends to our family. In Hong Kong, once his movies started to find success, he became famous and it became very difficult to know who his authentic friends were. There were some, which was great, but people are very quick to criticize, right? You see it today on social media. I mean, people criticize me. They criticize every picture, everything that you do, right? And so people were very critical of him. He was too westernized for the Chinese people in Hong Kong. He had broken away from his traditional Wing Chun training and created his own martial arts. So that was despicable, right? He was married to a Caucasian woman and he had biracial kids. How could he do that? He had all these crazy ideas and he was very controlling and he was this, right? But the truth of the matter is that growing up in the midst of all of that, what I will say is that My father was a person who was extremely focused and engaged. And so my sense of him as a child was that when he was home with us kids, um, he was very present. He loved us. He wanted his family nearby, you know, and that felt really good. And even though I lost my father at the age of 4, a lot of people are always saying, oh, those first few years, they're so seminal, they're so important. And I'm here as a testament to say that it's true in the sense that I think that my innate sense of safety, like like inner strength and positivity and um, understanding what love is, it all comes from that time and it comes a lot from him.
That is a very beautiful foundation right there.
Yeah.
That's really nice. You mentioned that you started stewarding the estate about 20 or so years ago. I'm curious for you in between then, what was your path personally, career wise?
Yeah.
Where was your travels like?
Well, thank you for asking. You know, my dad, my brother, and myself were all very creative people. And athletic people. And my mom is very athletic too, by the way. I often think like, oh, she was just the perfect partner for my dad because she is like crazy athletic. Even now, she's 80 years old and she works out more than I do. She, and she's adventurous. Like she wants to travel around the world. She wants to go on big trips and she ran marathons and she's done, all sorts of stuff, right? So for me, I played a lot of sports. I also did some theater. I didn't know what I wanted to do when I went to college, and my brother sat me down and was like, just follow your heart. Just do whatever excites you and you find intriguing and interesting. And so I ultimately ended up majoring in music. So I have a degree in vocal performance. I'm classically trained singer. I've sung opera and musical theater and in all different languages and things like that. And for a minute, I thought about going to get my master's and really trying to perform. But then I was like, I don't know if I really see that path for me. So I talked to my brother again and said, what do you think about acting? Because at the time he was acting. And I actually worked for him as his assistant, his personal assistant, when he was making Rapid Fire. And so we had a lot of conversations. And I said, what do you think about acting? I'm thinking about maybe trying to get into acting. And he said, it's really hard, particularly for women. Women are objectified, they're not treated great. He said, but if it's what you're passionate about, then great. He said, if there's something else you're passionate about, you should do that instead. He said, but if you want to do it, then do it, like why not? And I'm here and we'll both be in Hollywood and it'll be so fun. So I actually was not living in California at the time. I was still living in New Orleans, which is where I went to school. And I decided to come back to LA and try acting. And a few months before I moved back, my brother was killed. So that was really hard. And I kind of had this plan in motion. So I just went ahead and moved back to LA. And I just went ahead and tried acting. But I was not in the proper headspace for it. And so I had some minor success. I got some roles here and there and I did some things. Um, and I acted for, I don't know, 6 or 7 years. But after a time, it, my heart wasn't in it. I think I was still, it took me several years to heal from the loss of my brother. And so it was just hard to be in that space, knowing that we were supposed to be there together doing it. Um, and so my mom came to me at some point and said, in the late 90s, and said, I'm thinking about retiring from looking after your father's stuff. Do you have any interest? She's like, if you don't worry, like we'll find someone to manage it, but do you have any interest? And I, at the time, had really been training in martial arts. I'd been reading a lot of his writings. I'd been being highly influenced toward my own healing through my father's words and practices. And I said, I am interested in that actually, because I think there's so much more here than people really know and that they really get. They just think Bruce Lee and they think Kung Fu and action, and but they don't really know the depth of what's happening here. So in 2000, I stepped in to start stewarding the legacy. But at the time when I stepped in, the commercial rights to his name and likeness were controlled by another company. So there was some stuff that I was involved in, and there was a lot of cleanup work to do. And we started working with that company. And little by little, we just kept taking them to task over certain things. And they had done some stuff they weren't supposed to do. And we were sort of chipping away and wrestling with them for a long time. And I just really wanted to get those rights back because I just knew that if they were in my hands and in my control, that there was so much more I could do with them. And it took 11 years, but I got them back.
Wow.
Yeah. And so in 2011, we firmly launched everything that we've been working on for the past, whatever, 14 years or so.
It's an amazing journey.
Yeah, and it's been a lot, and it's led to amazing places for me. I mean, it started with just like licensing his name and image for products and things like that, but it's brought me to become a producer of TV and film. I'm developing multiple projects. I've written a couple books now. I'm working on a third and fourth book now, and I've become a podcaster, I've become a speaker, I've become all these things just through my sheer love and desire for spreading this message.
That is really beautiful, and it's really inspiring. I mean, I feel like in your own way, you're through your father's legacy and your own, which is why I wanted to ask about it. That your family is continuing to inspire people, and I did want to acknowledge your brother as well because you brought that up. And I grew up in the '90s, so I was a fan, and as a fan of your father and your brother, that was a tremendous loss that I'm sure we all felt. But I think the silver lining is one, Brandon Lee has his own legacy that stands on its own as well.
Yeah.
And it was interesting because I do remember you said earlier that it was about your perspective on his death having to change. And the fact that you were able to do that by reconnecting with your father and his legacy and his teaching is really powerful. And you've done an amazing job in these last decades or so of bringing his legacy into the future. In the hip hop space that I'm in, a lot of times people pass away and the music is gone, or there's all these disputes like you mentioned about who owns what. And a lot of times people's memory kind of falls by the wayside, but it seems like through your work, the Lee legacy is stronger than ever.
Oh, well, thank you. I really appreciate that reflection. And there have definitely been times, especially in more recent years, where I'm like, okay, I dedicate a lot of my time and energy towards someone else's legacy. What is it that I want? Who am I? And, I am my father's legacy, right? I'm his child. And I understand him in a way, I think that no one else does, right? Um, Obviously, there are people who knew him better than I did, but I don't know if they resonate energetically with him the way that I do. Um, and so I have my very own unique perspective, and a lot of him is also in me. And I think, like I said, in particular in the philosophy, that's where we really come together. And so when I more and more as I go out in the world and do things out in the world, I just have to keep asking myself, okay, what's the difference between a decision that's good for the business and that is something that really comes through you? And who can I give these good for the business decisions to implement, and so that I can focus all of my love, intent, and energy on the parts that really come directly through me. And so that's been something that I'm working on all the time.
Yeah.
But because I love to be creative, I mean, a lot of times we tend to think of creativity as arts, right? Fine arts, um, writing, painting, acting, photography, whatever, music, right? But really everything is a creative act, because every day, every moment, we're making choices. Every day, every moment, we're shaping the next step, right? And so, and so for me, I get a lot out of doing all the things I do, whether I'm doing them for Bruce Lee and that side of things or for Shannon Lee. The line between those two things is very, very fine.
Right. I mean, that's the sense I get is that, you know, it's not like you're just milking the likeness to like sell t-shirts, right?
Yeah.
um, it's a way for you to do for him and your family, but you're also finding your own way. And I learned that you were involved with the TV show Warrior,
Yeah.
and you're an author, and you're an entrepreneur and public speaker, and I'm sure there's going to be much more coming. And I'm just excited to see where it goes. And I'm really glad that we were able to connect and have this conversation.
Me too.
I hope people go August 5th, check out the Bruce Lee night with the Oakland Ballers.
Yeah, and let me just say this, come out and support August 5th for the Ballers because it's in conjunction with the Bruce Lee Foundation, and the Bruce Lee Foundation is our 501(c)(3), our public charity. And a lot of people think that the foundation is the commercial enterprise, but Bruce Lee Enterprises is the commercial side, and Bruce Lee Foundation is the charitable side. And through the charity, our mission is to empower youth mental wellness through martial arts and mindfulness programs based in my father's teachings. And we work with different communities, different nonprofits, Boys and Girls Club, Asian Arts Initiative, the Winglet Museum. We have programs, around the country and in Hong Kong, to help give kids tools that help them feel confident, to build their resilience, to build their mental perspective and their mental toughness, right? To be able to navigate life. And so by coming out to the Ballers, you're also supporting our youth and helping them to lead great lives. So bruceleefoundation.org is the website for our charity. And I hope you'll come out.
Yeah, I'll definitely be there. And
All right. Well, good. We'll meet in person because
yeah,
I'll be
yeah.
there too.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I mean, and I love that. That sounds amazing. I would love to support that as well. So, I hope to stay in touch, and just please any way that my platform can support your work. I'm just an email away. So, I hope we can continue to stay in touch and support each other's work.
I hope so too. Thank you so much for having this conversation, to want to give me and all of this a voice. I really appreciate you, and I hope you have a good rest of your day, and I'll see you in August.
All right. Sounds good. Thank you so much, Shannon Lee, everybody. Till next time. Peace.
All right. Peace.
Recognize where you got the game. We got our own style, got our own slang. Northern California is a West Coast thing. This is the history of the Bay. Recognize where you got the game. We got our own style, got our own slang. Northern California is a West Coast thing. This is the history of the Bay.